Hello again, and welcome to the wrap-up and feedback on week 2, which was integrated urban water management. I must say that we're really enjoying the level of discussion that's coming through at the moment. A wide range of divergent views from different people's perspectives and different countries they come from. So we're learning. Mm-hmm. As educators, we're learning just as much, I think, as many of the learners would be. But we have Tony Kelly here today. People have introduced to Tony in the course. Tony was the former managing director of Yarra Valley Water. Yarra Valley Water being a retail water company, and that's one of the issues we need to just clarify quickly, Tony, because some learners have thought a retail water company is a private company. Well, in Australia it's not, it's a government-owned company. But the retail water company provides the services to households and businesses.
That's right. And
Melbourne Water provides the bulk services, the reservoirs, and you provide the water. We did provide the water.
And collect the sewage.
That's right.
Yep.
That needed to be clarified because I think people relate retail with selling at shops. Okay. Anyway, that gets that out of the way. There are 3 issues I want to discuss with you today, Tony. And the first is around the scale and importance of centralised and decentralised sewage facilities. Just for context, Melbourne has to treat 320 gigalitres of sewage a year, 320 million cubic metres of sewer. About 90% of that is done by Melbourne Water at 2 major centres, and we've explained this in the course. So less than 10% is treated at decentralised facilities by the retail water companies. I guess the question we'd ask you to reflect on, Tony, is what do you think of the future when Melbourne grows from 4.5 to 8 million people? How much of the sewage treatment will be by decentralised facilities, and what do you think the drivers will be for that sort of change?
I think there's no doubt, Rob, over time as the population increases and Melbourne grows, there'll be greater use of decentralised based on our experience to date. I think the drivers in our experience have really been around understanding the impacts that we currently have with the centralised system. But as Melbourne grows and new development, is added to to Melbourne to make it even bigger, what we're finding is that the centralised systems are having to stretch further and further to service this new development. As a consequence of that, we're finding that in some cases the energy requirements are even greater. In some of the northern parts of Melbourne, for instance, we're already pumping the water 3 times to get it into those areas. So by comparison, a decentralised system in the north has made a lot of sense because we can avoid those additional energy costs. Also, we're finding in new developments, of course, as developments are added to Melbourne's fringe, they're putting more pressure on the downstream areas. And in Melbourne, everything tends to gravitate towards the city, so there's increased pressure on flooding and also increased nutrients and damage to the natural streams in these new areas. So
as Melbourne grows, the centralised facilities aren't necessarily the cheapest way of treating those.
I think my experience has been that you really need to have a good process to follow. So I'm not seduced in any sense by the dogma of decentralised systems. I think the way I prefer to operate is really the numbers trump the dogma. So what we always tried to develop was a sound planning framework within which would help us make objective decisions, but also to give us really good comparisons between the various options. So in the north, for instance, where we do have to pump the water 3 times, in that case, the decentralised systems won hands down, and in addition to that, they were providing recycled sewage water, which made those areas drought-proof.
Okay, to put you on the spot, and we'll check on this in 2050 when Melbourne has a population of 8 million. What proportion? Currently, it's 5 to 10. What proportion do you reckon of the sewage will be treated by decentralised facilities?
I think from now on, the vast majority of sewage collected from new development will be treated locally, because it's now seen as a valuable resource to drought-proof areas, to enhance open space, so and generally it's lower economic or
30%? 30%?
Possibly as high as that. I mean, if you look at Melbourne, it's going to grow.
In 2050, we'll go out there together.
Hopefully.
Thanks.
Right.
The second question I wanted to talk was about non-structural measures.
Yes.
Ben Firmatch gave a very good presentation in the course on non-structural. Non-structural being planning, institutional, regulatory, pricing, and also water conservation, demand management. And some of the learners have said, is requiring people to behave in a certain way sustainable?
Yeah.
So what's your experience been in Melbourne about the sustainability of behaviour change processes?
Yeah, look, I don't have an issue with that. I think our experience through the drought, Rob, was people saved anywhere between 30 and 40% consumption per capita, and that really gave us the time and space to develop more secure solutions for Melbourne. But the lasting legacy of that has been that the consumption in Melbourne has not gone back to pre-drought levels. So I think the community, they had almost 5 or 7 years of behaviour supporting our water conservation objectives, and to a large extent that's locked in. I think what's happened in the community now is that people better understand the real value of water. So I think that's a little bit embedded in the psyche. I think the issue with water conservation is that you've got to keep it warm. You can't just sort of drop the ball and just hope that people are going to maintain those behaviours. So it's sustainable providing you maintain the rage. Yes, exactly. Yes, you have to keep promoting it. You have to keep encouraging people. The other side of the coin with water conservation, I think, is that it's you can save that once, and we've saved, say, almost 40%, which is fantastic. I don't think there's another 40%. So it is sort of almost a once-off, but it's also, in my experience, it's been probably the most economic answer as well. Yeah. It's quite cheap to promote water conservation, get the community on side, understand why we need to do this stuff, and they've embraced it with a lot of enthusiasm, and it's served us really well. Yeah. But we do need to maintain the rage. Yes. Well, the final issue is a number of people have raised the issue. A lot of people really enjoyed the water energy discussion in the course. Yeah. A lot of people say, centralised facilities are efficient because you provide, it might be expensive, like desalination is undoubtedly highly energy intensive, but when it's delivered to 2 million households, the unit cost is quite small. Now that's true. Yeah. If you look at desalination, the cost of getting desalination water and using it in a household on average is about the same cost as running the refrigerator in a day. So energy is as this course has demonstrated, it's not just desalination plants are expensive, but there are times when energy costs become quite critical. Yes. You've done quite a bit of work you did at Yarra Valley Water, using greenhouse gas emissions as a major factor. Yep. When are greenhouse gas factors a decider? How important are they? Oh, they're critical. I mean, all of the analysis we did, and we leant very heavily on life cycle assessment, and the 3 most prominent factors in the analysis always came up as greenhouse gases, nutrients discharged through sewage treatment processes, and the third one was water extracted from rivers. So greenhouse gases was probably the most prominent of the 3, and so it is a really big factor in any decisions about, is option A better than option B, were always heavily influenced by the greenhouse gas impacts. So it is a critically important element that people need to come to, and these issues of economy of scale, yes, but it's it's not one thing or another. No, you really do need a thorough analysis. Like I was going to say to you before, like the work that we're doing in the north now is almost entirely decentralised. That's because pump 3 times and all that, and also you've got to pump the sewage back 3 times. North of Melbourne. Yeah, but if you go to the east of Melbourne, Rob, where we're relatively close to the dams, where the water falls by gravity, there's a different solution out there. Yeah. As there's a different solution in the Dandenong Ranges, where we also have to pump the water right up to the top of the mountain to allow it then to fall by gravity. Yeah. So each of these areas are distinct, and they need to be assessed independently. And then you're much more likely to come up with a much more sustainable answer. I have to say, Tony, that's probably the biggest take-home message that we have in this course, that every part of Melbourne, every part of a city is different. Yes. And you just can't generalise, can you? No, you can't. And we're going to explore those in the next few weeks. Next week we're looking at water-sensitive urban design, which applies particular solutions to particular areas. Then we're looking at flooding, we're looking at urban design, how that affects it. So this course is meant to provide an overall picture
But the overall theme is every part of the city is different.
Yes, I fully support that, Rob.
Yeah.
I think it all comes down to good planning processes which deal with all the options objectively as possible.
Okay, Tony, well, thank you very much. Learners really liked your sessions. I can report back to you on that. These are some of the questions that were hanging in the air, so I think it was useful just to discuss them.
Great, Rob. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.